We got to talk about Manchester United 2, Everton 2, what we learned from the game, because there is so much to break down from this game. I've wrote down some notes, got some stats, got some bits and bobs up. First half, absolutely atrocious. One of the worst, if not arguably the worst 45 minutes I've seen from Manchester United. Unbelievable, the lack of effort, how standoffish people like Maguire were for the goal. The defending was absolutely appalling. The only thing good I could say from the first half was Dorgu. Anything good in the first half came through Dorgu. Bruno was involved a little bit, playing Dorgu in, him putting some crosses in. He was a breath of fresh air, and I was thinking, isn't it always weird that the new signing comes into Manchester United, looks amazing, and in a couple months' time, he could be brought down to the levels of everybody else. Dorgu was fantastic. But the second half, to be honest, that was one of the most entertaining 45 minutes we've probably watched this season as Man United fans, but the bar is very, very low. It was a really good second half. Well, it wasn't a really good second half. It was a good second half. There was fight, there was desire. It was a good watch. It was end to end. I was feeling the emotions. I was fuming at the penalty, and luckily, it wasn't given. And I think karma that it wasn't given, and not karma, justice that the penalty wasn't given. I see people complaining that we got away with one. I'm sorry, did you see the penalty decision in the last minute versus West Ham against De Ligt that West Ham got? That was justice, because Ashley Young, we know he dives. He dived for us. He made the most out of it. There's contact there. You think if the ref gives it VAR, probably wouldn't overturn it. But Ashley Young made the most out of that. And I think after what happened at West Ham when they got a penalty for nothing, I think, if Everton had got a penalty in the last minute for that, I'd have been absolutely fuming. Now, there's things and question marks from this game. 4 big chances Everton created to our 1. Again, not scoring goals. Nothing happened in the first half of games. The XG very low, not creating chances. Not much is happening. And there's quite a lot to say from this game. And I will say one thing. I think Ruben Amorim was very wrong about the youngsters at United. I'm not saying that the youngsters are ready and that they're going to make a huge difference. But you could see with Chido coming on, he made a few nice touches and he held the ball much better than Rasmus Hojlund. I think Ruben Amorim was wrong in the Tottenham game to only give Chido 3 minutes. And when the first team is playing like that and showing that little intensity, Ruben Amorim should dive into the youth more. And we'll talk about that in more detail. But the first 45 minutes was shambolic. And I'm going to talk about that in more detail in a second. Dorgu was good, Chido was good, and I think Ruben Amorim was wrong to only give him 3 minutes versus Spurs. We actually look better when Rasmus comes off, and I'm someone that's tried to defend Rasmus Hojlund, but he had a stinker today, and he's had a stinker for about 10 games in a row. The goal injected new intensity, and this is my big question. This is my big problem with Manchester United. You look at the Southampton game; it was atrocious for 70 minutes. Ahmad scored a goal. We had a bit more intensity, and the last 20 minutes of the game we were good versus Southampton. The Leicester game last week was atrocious in the FA Cup, but in the last 20 minutes we woke up and we looked good. Why are our wins and points under Amorim coming from maybe an atrocious first half? Starting the second half, a few substitutions, and we look a lot better the last 20 minutes. Why is it taking us 70 minutes to play football and show some intensity? Why can't we play good football from minute 1? Why can't we show that intensity and desire from minute 1? Because I think a big thing with this squad and the reason we've been so poor is the lack of intensity in games. We saw in the Arsenal game, the Liverpool game, we can start games with good intensity and fight. But we're asleep until we wake up or a goal gives us some momentum and confidence. And it just shows that that confidence and momentum is so big for this team. This team is lost, and that goal gave them that desire and that push to up the tempo. And there's definitely a mental aspect to this Manchester United side that needs working on. I think a lot of it is just mental, the lack of confidence, the desire needed, the lack of goals. I think it took 70 minutes and a goal to then wake us up. And that's something that's a big problem. I think Casemiro is finished at this level. Ruben Amorim said he needs intensity. Casemiro doesn't have the intensity, and that's why he's struggling, and we're better when he's not playing. But who else could he play? We'd be lost without Bruno. The thing is with us is Bruno is our best player in the final third now. Ahmad's out injured. But if we have Bruno in the final third and we've got Casemiro and Ugarte in the pivot, we're not getting the ball to the final third and we're doing really badly in the midfield. So we always have to move Bruno into the midfield to then get the ball into the final third and hope that Bruno shows up in the final third. But where would we be without him? I saw people saying that Bruno's horrific and he doesn't suit the system at half time. But the only player better than Bruno in the first half was Dorgu. And now that wasn't Bruno's best game in the first half, but the only player better than Bruno in the first half was Dorgu. Bruno shows up in the second half, turns that game around. People give Bruno slander. People may not like Bruno Fernandes at Manchester United, and that is fine. He might not be your preference of player, but where would we be without Bruno Fernandes? If Bruno Fernandes picks up an injury tomorrow and he's out to the end of the season, we are officially in a serious relegation battle, because we're 13 points above Ipswich now, could be 10 points if they beat Tottenham, 13 points above the gap now, And I don't feel safe. But if Bruno Fernandes got injured, I really would not feel safe. But the left-hand side showed some promise, and I thought Garnacho coming off the bench makes an impact. And I've got a big debate around Garnacho, because when Garnacho starts, I think he's underwhelming. But then when he comes off the bench, when he's hungry, we look so much better. And it's like Xerxes gets better when Garnacho comes off, because Xerxes got a player running and bringing that intensity. And it's like if we had a good squad depth, we could have Garnacho as an impact player coming off the bench every game. But because the squad depth is bad, we almost need Garnacho to start because he's better than Hojlund, and we can put Chido up top and maybe Xerxes right 10. But then Garnacho's poorer when he starts. Like that's the big question for me. But he's really good when he comes off the bench this season. Ashley Young was a dive. Don't care. He made the most out of it. You can see why it could be given. But he did this for Man United. We know he dives. But I'm glad we showed the mentality to fight back. But one thing that really annoyed me, and one thing that really wound me up today, was Onana constantly punching the ball into danger. Again, the penalty. Again, chances Everton had is from Onana. Just put the ball over for a corner, or he's giving the ball and putting it into dangerous areas. And I think if we didn't have such an issue at centre-back, midfield, wing-back, striker and left 10, which are the 5 positions we need in the summer, we'd be saying goalkeeper. And maybe we do need to look at a Suzuki or a goalkeeper on the cheap, because Onana has been poor. But I think Amorim was so wrong to Chido versus Spurs. And I think Amorim's been really wrong about the youth, because I just think the first team is this bad that even if the youth aren't ready, I think if you throw them in and they just show a bit of desire made a difference in those last 20 minutes, and we could get better. And I thought Academy Scoot was spot on here. Chido's performance should be enough proof that for Amorim that even if the youngsters aren't ready, they generally can't be worse than what we got on the pitch. Give them a chance. And I agree, because Chido had a much better game than Hojlund, because Chido was touching the ball and holding up the ball and playing off a few decent passes. He wasn't heavily involved in the game, but whoever plays striker isn't going to be heavily involved in the game because we can't create anything. I'm going to show you our XG from the first half, 0.04. We don't create anything, but he was getting involved. He was making some nice touches. And as Wasim said here, the lad did very well coming on in a frantic game, just provided more physical presence, held it well at times, and looked to link with teammates. Good given the circumstances. It was better than Hojlund. It was an improvement. He may be young, he may be raw, he's not going to be prime R9, but Hojlund's been so bad lately that, Chido just coming on and actually holding up the ball and playing a few passes was more than what Hojlund had offered us. But we've got to talk about the first half, because the first half was appalling. It was disgraceful. This is what I tweeted at half-time, or the 40th minute to be exact. This Man United side is a disgrace. Can't even clear the ball, leading to 2 easy goals for Everton. Maguire was ball watching, allowing Decore to score. 0 attempts on target, no fight, no desire, no ideas. Nothing is being created in attack. 0.04 XG in the first half. Pickford had nothing to do. Created. There was no fight, there was no desire. We were not winning the second ball. Nothing was being created in attack. But it's not even like defence was being good. Maguire was appalling today. Matthijs de Ligt was appalling today. Maguire particularly ball watching for Decore. Delo, the header for the first goal. We had 5 opportunities to clear the ball for the first goal. We didn't. Maguire, what were you doing versus Decore? It was disgusting. It was disgusting, the defending for those 2 goals. It was some of the worst I'd seen. This was championship level defending. This was we deserve to be relegated level defending. I looked at the team. It was the worst we've ever had in terms of my lifetime. That first half performance. And I know we've had first halves where we've been 2-3-0 down. I get it. I think we were 4-0 down versus Liverpool. I get it. But this first half was the worst, because there was 0 confidence, there was 0 ideas or desire to win the ball. We were not winning the second ball. We were not closing the Everton players down. But the simple passes we couldn't do. We were giving Everton space. We were not closing them down. We were not winning the second ball. Everton were always first to the ball. When we got the ball, Everton were on us. Desire. Everton showed desire. Everton showed fight. We did not show that. When we do create chances, which is rare, we miss sitters like the Tottenham game, but we weren't creating chances today. Bruno scored a brilliant free kick and Ugarte scored a goal from outside the box. That very rarely happens, We weren't creating opportunities to be like, well done Pickford, or Hojlund should have scored that. And that is a problem. We're not creating enough. We're 2-0 down, and it looked like Everton wanted it more until the 70th minute. Until Amorim finally made subs. It took him like 65 minutes to make subs, which is way too slow. Second half was appalling. I'm shocked he didn't make a sub at half time. I was worried, and again, I said this in the 40th minute, if Ipswich start picking up points, we're in trouble. This is a 6-pointer if Ipswich beat Spurs. Delo falling off a cliff, Maguire shambles, Hojlund can't keep the ball, Casemiro can barely run. Anything good came from Dorgu, and guess what? He just arrived. How long do we get sucked into being like the others? Because that first half was appalling from Manchester United. That first half was disgraceful, and there's no excuses for that. as I said, intensity makes a difference, but the lack of effort worries me. The lack of creativity worries me. This is a message the youth should play more. Dorgu looking a level ahead of everyone else and being Amorim's only signing says it all. Says it all. I'm going to say that. And he worked very well. And I think Garnacho involved Dorgu more when he came on this time, and they worked well when the left-hand side was good, the right-hand side not so good. But I'm worried about the lack of creativity. 0.45 XG versus Everton, but 0.04 in the first half. And as H said here, Man United scored 1 goal in their first 10 league games in the first half, and that was Bruno's penalty versus Jan. It's the longest run the club ever had without scoring a non-penalty goal in the first half of the league match in history of the competition. Our last non-penalty goal in the first half was the 7th of December versus Forest, which was 2.5 months ago. You know, we're not scoring goals in the first half, and the lack of intensity in the first half is clearly a problem. Now, I saw this from Pythagoras in Boots, saying problem United managers have had with Garnacho is how do you channel the electricity he brings off the bench into a starter role? If Garnacho can do what he does off the bench in a starter role, there's a top-class player there who misses sitters and maybe decision-making could be better, but there's something that you need. Because Garnacho brings what we need. Yes, he misses sitters. Yes, he can be selfish. But Garnacho's got what we need. And if we actually had a good squad, we could mould him in more and he could start a few games, come off the bench in a few games if we had good players. If he was at Real Madrid, but he'd be utilised so much better as he's learning and developing. But he's not. And I think that there's a good player in Garnacho, but we need to find the way to get the best out of him because he should probably be a starter now that Ahmad's out injured with the lack of quality in the squad, but he is better off the bench. But look, where would we be without Bruno? I would give Dorgu player of the match, but Bruno woke up in that second half and he just did everything. Most touches, got a fantastic goal. And that Bruno goal changed the game because the minute Bruno scored, the players had belief. And again, mentality is a big thing with this United squad. The players needed belief. He created 1 big chance, 2 key passes. You know, he was there and he was changing up the game. So man of the match, Bruno, who's way too disrespected by fans. It upsets me that Bruno plays for Man United sometimes because I think he's such a good player. He deserves better than us. And I can't believe I'm saying that as a Man United fan. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. Bye.